Everybody, and welcome to Cooking with Claire Pesach 2022. It's lovely to welcome you all into my new kitchen. And for those of you who are regulars in watching my webinars, you will notice that there is no clicking sound because I don't have that horrible oven that didn't work anymore. So today we're going to be making 3 dishes, and these are 3 dishes that are perfect to make at Pesach, but the very interesting thing about them is that they're actually fantastic to use the year round. So they're very useful dishes indeed. We're going to start off making Lebanese lemon chicken, which is a very simple dish that packs a punch. Then we're going to make a French chocolate cake, which is gâteau reine de Saba. And I'll describe to you how I would normally top it. We won't have time for that today. And lastly, we're going to be doing roasted mixed vegetables. So let's make a start. First thing you need is you're going to need a tray of some sort. Now, I like at Pesach to use a foil tray, especially if I'm going to be making it a bit before Pesach and freezing it, because it's very easy to then slide in your oven. But any sort of roasting tray that you line with foil would be really good. And I'm only suggesting you line it with foil just because otherwise it can make quite a mess in the bottom of your tin. So if we can scoot down to washing my hands now, Alan. I'm going to grab a chicken that I have just picked up from the gourmet this morning, and I spoke to the butchers and asked them to chop my chicken into 8 equal sized portions. So here we have my chicken, and when you get a whole chicken, I'm sure you've all seen this before, you always end up with some extra little bits and pieces. Here we have a couple of feet and a neck. Unfortunately, we don't get the pupik anymore, which for my family is their favourite bit in the soup. And this chicken actually has 3 feet. Don't ask why. There is a good explanation. Here we go. So the chicken is cut into 8 equal sized pieces. If you have a look here, so they're just with the skin on, and I'm just going to lay them down in the tin. Now, a kosher chicken usually will have a little bit of plastic or metal on it to prove that it's kosher, and I'm just going to take that off because you don't really want to cook that. And I'm going to lay all my pieces of chicken down in the bottom of my tin. Now, personally, I find it easier finding my portions of chicken afterwards if I put all the white pieces of chicken at one end of my tray and all the brown pieces of chicken at the other end. So there we have it, 2 legs, 2 thighs, 2 breasts and 2 wing portions, and there we are. Right, now what I need to do now is wash my hands properly, because if you're handling raw chicken, you definitely want to wash your hands before you do anything else, and that's really, really important. So I'm just going to give them a really good wash now. I'm not touching this chicken again. So the next thing that you're going to need, apart from your lovely medium chicken chopped up into 8 pieces, is you're going to need potatoes. And what you need is, I'm just checking, it's 800 grams of potatoes. I like to use Maris Piper potatoes because I think their flavour's great, and I think they hold their shape, but they go soft, excuse the noises. So the potatoes need to be chopped into quite small dices. And I'm just going to quickly, I've already peeled these potatoes just for convenience sake, and I'm actually chopping them quite small. You can see that? There we go. And all I'm doing is dropping them over the top of my chicken pieces. You do need to have a container that you're cooking your chicken pieces in. It does need to be big enough to have all your pieces side by side and room for the potatoes that you're going to lay over the top. Now, if you didn't have Maris Piper potatoes, any other form of waxy potatoes will be absolutely fine. It's definitely easier doing this with a bigger potato where you don't have to do as much peeling. A lot of these potatoes, unfortunately, were quite small, so it was a bit of a pain. These smaller ones I'm literally just going to chop into quarters. Now, this recipe came from a Lebanese cookbook by a friend of our family called Mona Hamadeh. And Mona is an excellent cook. And all of her recipes I've found over the years require minimal amounts of ingredients and they give you the maximum amount of flavour. This is a fantastically punchy, flavourful recipe, and it's also so incredibly simple. It takes minimal amount of time to make. So all I'm doing at the moment is dicing my potatoes. I'm nearly there. And then once they're diced, we're just going to drizzle a couple of tablespoons of oil over the top of them and pop them in the oven for about 40 minutes to an hour until they're nicely browned. Now, in my oven, I've got a setting specifically for poultry, and this setting, it has like almost a grill element to it, and it tends to brown my chicken off much, much faster. So I do manage to cook it for a smaller amount of time. If you've just got a regular oven, it will take a bit longer. It will take that hour. So it needs to go in at 100 and just double check the temperature. I should remember, but I don't. Right, so preheating the oven to 200 degrees, and I'm just going to drizzle a couple of tablespoons of olive oil over the top. Now, if you can't get hold of olive oil at Pesach, then you can just use regular sunflower oil. But the olive oil will give it a really nice flavour. So I'm literally just drizzling it over. I'm not even adding any salt or pepper at this point. And you can have a little look at this. You can have a look at that. Literally just potatoes, chicken. It's going in my preheated oven. 200 degrees, and I'm going to give this about 40 minutes. But I will check on it as I'm going along, because what I need to make sure is that it's not burning. On this particular setting, it does tend to crisp up the skin fairly fast, and you're wanting to cook this chicken until the skin is nicely browned. Right, we're going to leave that alone for the moment. I'm going to move all this stuff out of the way. And the next thing that we're going to start making is our French chocolate cake, which is Gâteau Reine de Saba. So if you will just excuse me while I clear a space and bring the next lot of equipment over. Now, this is where I have to make a confession. I have a new kitchen with a new cooker, and my new cooker is induction only. And I discovered to my horror this morning that only one pan in the whole of my milchik section of my kitchen works on this particular cooker. And here it is. Here it is. It is huge. And for this particular recipe, if you have a smaller pan, please use a smaller pan. You really, really do not need such a large pan. There we go. So this recipe came from the Evelyn Rose cookbook, and it is it's called Reine de Saba, Queen of Sheba cake. It's not in the Pesach section. That's quite an interesting thing to note. But it is absolutely perfect for Pesach. For me, it's my favourite all-time chocolate cake. If you slightly undercook it, it's a delight. It's more of like a mousse, chocolate mousse that you bake. So we'll get started with the cake. The first thing that we need to do is preheat the oven to 180 degrees. I've actually done it to 170 because my oven seems to be quite fierce. And then I've got ready an 8-inch cake tin. Here we go. So this is just a loose bottom 8-inch cake tin. Personally, I prefer to line it with paper because then it's much, much easier for getting the cake out afterwards. It won't stick. If you're using a regular tin without a liner, you'll need to grease it before you start. Right, the next thing we need to do is we need to separate 6 eggs. So not only am I going to be separating these eggs, but I'm also going to be checking them for blood spots. So here we are. So 6 eggs, double check that's definitely 6. No, it's not 6 eggs, I'm sorry, it's 4 eggs. bear with me. So this is 4 eggs we're going to separate. So what you need to do, give a good tap of your egg. And then you let the white dribble out. And then you pour the yolk from side to side in the shells. Let the shells catch the yolk. Very, very important that if the yolk starts to break, which mine did there, that you get it out the way as fast as possible. If you get any yolk into your egg white, it will not beat up. So that's very, very important to know. Another way you can use to separate your egg out is you can just literally hold your hand over your glass. There we are. You see? I'm checking to make sure there's no blood spots while I'm doing this. And then second yolk goes in there, second white goes into my white spool. Okay, that's 2 eggs. Let's go on with egg number 3. And it's important to take your time with this because with the price of food these days, you don't want to waste an egg. There we go. That's 3 egg whites, 3 egg yolks, and here's the final one. If you did find that you ended up breaking the yolk, that's the reason why I'm separating it out into a glass, is that then it's only 1 egg yolk that's gone rather than doing it straight into your bowl. Okay, so now those are completely separated. I've got to go on to the next part. I'm just going to wipe up all this gooey egg white that's spilled and move these out of the way. Right, next thing that we need to do is in a small pan. Okay, I'm going to say this again. In a small pan, obviously, do as I say, not as I do. What you need to do next is turn it onto a low heat. In my case, I'm just going to put it onto about 3 or 4. And you're going to add to this 6 ounces, which is 175 grams of plain chocolate that you've broken up. If you've got chocolate chips, you can use that. And I'll pop that in the pan. Oops, I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to do that. You can tell it's been a while since I've been doing this recipe. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to melt 4 ounces, which is 125 grams of butter in the bottom of your pan. Then, when that's melted, you're going to add the sugar, which is also 4 ounces of 125 grams of caster sugar. And then we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. Here we go. If you can't get hold of any vanilla essence at Pesach, you can get hold of vanilla sugar. Just substitute 1 teaspoon of vanilla sugar for your regular sugar. So at the moment, what we've got, if I move this a little bit closer, is we have the butter melting in the pan. See if we can see in there. Nope, it's not quite that. There we go, in there. Oh, you can see it. So the butter is just melting in the pan now. And once we've done that, we've got our 6 ounces, 175 grams of plain chocolate, and we've also got our sugar. So, just waiting for this to go. Let me tell you just a little bit about this particular cake. So, this cake, if you slightly undercook it, it tastes fantastic. If you found you slightly overcooked it, when it comes to eat it, it'll taste better if you warm it through a little bit because it's got so much melted chocolate in it. It goes into this wonderful moussey texture, which is marvelous. I just prefer it slightly undercooked. So it's just melting at the moment. So while we're waiting for that to melt, I think what I might do is I'm going to make this easier for later, I'm going to start chopping up my chocolate. So I've broken the chocolate up into pieces, but it will be easier to use if you break it up. So I'm just going to chop this into slightly smaller pieces. You need to use quite a big knife. And if I tell you, while that's melting, one of the things that's really, oops, really lovely with this cake is afterwards, it can be eaten just as it comes out, just dusted with a bit of icing sugar if you have some. But what is absolutely fabulous on the top of it is if you make a ganache. You can make a ganache with fresh cream, or you can make it with paraffin cream. And the way you do it is in a microwave or in a pan. So in a microwave for a minute, or in a pan just until it's hot. You heat up 3 fluid ounces of double cream or paraffin cream. And once it's hot, you remove it from the heat and you stir in 100 grams, 4 ounces of dark chocolate. And you just keep stirring it in until it's melted. And once it's melted, you can pour it over the cake and it will form this beautiful mirrored ganache. It's utterly delicious and it works a treat. Right, so I think this butter is, I'll turn it up slightly. This butter is melting very nicely. So we'll have a look at our butter. There we go. So once the butter's melted, then we're going to add the sugar and we'll be adding the chocolate. So what I'm trying to do to try and get the butter to melt a bit faster is I'm using my spatula to break the butter up. And actually what you can do is chop your butter up into pieces before you even start. Now, if you want to make this cake non-dairy, you can just use block margarine. Block margarine works fine. And then you can have this as a paraffin cake. And of course, then with your topping, if you were going to do the ganache, you do it with paraffin cream. So we're just getting this nicely melted. I'm being very, very cautious here, because one thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to burn my butter, and it is quite easy to burn butter. Now, the recipe calls for unsalted butter, but if you don't have any unsalted butter, just use lightly salted butter and it will work absolutely fine. I'm not quite sure what the reason for using the unsalted butter is, so you'll have to bear with me. If anybody knows, you can email me afterwards and then I'll have an idea. Right, so butter's just about melted. Next thing I need to do is I'm going to add the sugar. There we go, that's our 4 ounces, 125 grams of sugar. Give that a little stir. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Grab my teaspoon from here. There we go. Teaspoon of vanilla. There we are. Get that all melted in. And then I'm going to add my broken up pieces of chocolate. Here we go. Chocolate that I've chopped up. Okay. I'm going to turn the temperature right down there. Mary Berry always says, treat chocolate with great respect and never rush it. Never ever rush your chocolate. So I've turned the temperature of this right down. And if you have a look at that, you'll see that it's melting very, very quickly. And it could almost melt in its own, in just its own heat from the heated up butter and sugar. I'm just going to keep that on a little bit longer. In the meantime, the next thing that we need to do is we need to beat up the egg whites. So turn this around. There we go. The noise won't be brilliant. So Alan, if you tell me if the noise is going to be a problem, I can turn the sound off while I'm doing this and then put the sound back on again afterwards. So I've got my 4 egg whites here that we've already separated. I'm just going to add a pinch of salt. I'm putting it into my hand first. That's probably what I would call a pinch of salt. There we go. And that just helps to stabilize the egg whites. So when you start off beating up egg whites, you need to start off beating them up on the slow speed until they start frothing up. And then we're going to beat these until they form stiff, glossy peaks. Okay, I'm going to get started now. And hopefully this is not going to bother you too much. Here we go. Okay, I think we need the sound back. Have we got the sound back? So what we have here is our eggs now have stiff, glossy peaks in them. You can see. So that's how you know your eggs are cooked enough. And by this point, the chocolate is all melted. I'm just going to give that a stir, make sure my chocolate's all melted. It's important not to overdo your chocolate because it can easily separate. It is much better in a smaller pan, and I did not have one of those. Right. The next thing I need to do, just make sure it's not too hot, which it isn't. I've removed my chocolate from the heat. So I'm now going to stir in my egg yolks. And I stir them in quite rapidly. I don't want scrambled eggs here. I want the eggs beaten in. The next thing I'm going to add is, I've got 2 ounces of potato flour here. And to the 2 ounces of potato flour, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And this is just Pesach baking powder. Someone once asked me if I could make this without adding baking powder. And to tell you the truth, I don't know. I've never tried it. I imagine it would work, but just not be quite as light. So now I've got baking powder and the potato flour together. I'm going to add them in. It tends to stick to your bowl, so you will need to help it in a little. And I'm mixing that all in with my chocolatey mixture until it's thoroughly combined. There we are. Sorry about the noise there. Just knocking all the egg whites off my beaters. There we are. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pour all of my chocolatey mixture. So this is the chocolate, the butter, the sugar, the potato flour, the baking powder, the vanilla, and I'm going to pour all of this into my egg white mixture. There we go. And you want to get every last bit in because this is what gives it the most wonderful flavour. Yeah, so I reckon that's just about everything in there. Lovely. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fold the 2 mixtures together. It's quite important not to overbeat your egg whites because if you do, it's very difficult to fold your chocolatey mixture into them. And what you find is you sometimes end up with little lumps of egg white that haven't been properly amalgamated. It's not the end of the world. It'll still taste absolutely wonderful. It is a truly delicious cake. And as I've said, it is pretty much more of a chocolate mousse than a proper chocolate cake. It's a baked mousse. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting through the middle and I'm scraping around the bottom. I like to make this dish in a glass bowl because you can look underneath and you can see, just trying to think which way to turn it so that you can see it. Whoa, there you go. You can see if there's still some of the more chocolatey mixture stuck at the bottom and not properly mixed in. It's important to be folding in your chocolate into your egg whites because you've just put all this air into your egg whites, which is going to be what makes your cake light and fluffy and not flat as a pancake. Though it is rather a dense cake, you still want it to be light and airy. And if you knock all of that air out of your eggs, the texture of your cake is going to suffer. So I think I'm very much getting there now. I think I'm almost there. I'm just going to double check, look underneath. There's still a little bit more chocolate mixture that hasn't been quite amalgamated. If you use a spatula, you can actually use it to push down underneath the mixture and draw the thick chocolatey goo up to the top. So if you have a look at this now, it is uniform in colour and texture. There's not big lumps of egg whites in there, and there's not big, thick swathes of chocolatey mixture. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've got my prepared cakes, and this is 8 inches, I think it's about 22 centimetres. And I'm going to pour my mixture into my cake tin. And like I said, don't worry if you've got the odd blob of egg white that hasn't been fully amalgamated, it's fine. And I'm going to get all of this into here. And we'll pop this in the oven. And it needs about 40 minutes to an hour. It is definitely better to undercook this rather than overcook it. So I'm definitely going to check this after 40 minutes. And don't worry if it sinks a tiny bit at the end of cooking, because if it does, it just means that it's a little bit more gooey in the middle, and it really will taste wonderful. There we go. I think that's just, don't want to lose any of this mixture because it tastes so good. It's a shame to waste it. I'm going to have to clean my hands now because they're incredibly sticky. And then I'm going to also, when I put this in the oven, I'm then going to check on, oh, there we are. I'm going to give that, I'll check it after 35 minutes, but it might take a wee bit longer. I'm checking on the potatoes. Now the potatoes have had just over 20 minutes, and I'm going to show you what they look like so you can see what they look like part of the way through cooking. So they're starting to go nicely browned. You can see there. Yeah, so that's starting to go. I'm keeping an eye on them because if they get too browned, I will change the setting to regular roasting rather than the rotisserie effect. I'm going to move all of these out the way. The next thing I'm going to show you how to make is probably my favourite side dish, and it goes beautifully well with this chicken dish, and it's just a roasted vegetable dish. Now, during the year, sometimes I'll use other vegetables like baby sweet corn in this, but we can't use it if you're Ashkenazi. You can't use baby sweet corn at Pesach because it's called kitniot. If you're a Sephardi, feel free. So, here we are. I'm just getting all my ingredients ready. This really is a very, very easy, simple dish, and it has such an amazing flavour. So I think we're going to need to look back down at my hands again. And over here I have 3 peppers. I don't like using green peppers because I find them a bit bitter. So I tend to use red, orange and yellow peppers. I've got about 6 or 7 onions, not onions, 6 or 7 mushrooms. You don't have to use mushrooms if you don't like them or you're allergic to them. I got a couple of red onions. I have a couple of courgettes, a clove of garlic, and I have a chili. Again, the chili is optional. I've got 2 cloves of garlic here. Again, how much garlic you add is subject to taste. This is such a simple dish. All you need to do is chop up your vegetables. In the case of the onions, it's chop them into quarters and just peel off the skin. It's easiest to peel the skin off if you've already chopped them into quarters. I'm speaking from experience. And if it really doesn't peel off, you can just take the outer layer of the onion, but that would be a shame. And once you've chopped them in quarters like this, they do tend to kind of fall apart a bit, which is what you want, and you don't want such big lumps. You can use regular brown onions if you can't get hold of red ones, but the red ones are not quite as strong. They are a bit sweeter. Now, any of these ingredients in here, you could substitute, alter, change. If it wasn't Pesach, you can actually throw in a can of chickpeas, and that's quite nice. Some people like to put in aubergine. I'm not a huge aubergine fan because I think it makes it all go very dark brown colour, and I think it looks a lot less appealing, but that's absolutely fine also. Oops. So there we have our the 2 onions in the bottom. Next thing we're going to tackle is the peppers. The peppers are very easy. You're just slicing them down the sides. There we go. And again, the size that you cut them, I think that's about the right size, but it's very much according to your own personal taste. One thing to be aware of when you're making roasted vegetables, when they cook, they shrink. And I mean, they really, really shrink. So if you have completely filled your pan with vegetables right to the brim, you'll find that by the end of cooking, you're down to a half or maybe a third of the original volume. So it's just chopping these up now. Of course, the amount that you make is dependent upon how many people you have coming. I think for this is probably a good amount for about 8 to 10 guests, depending on how much they love the vegetables and how many other vegetables you're going to do with them. But as I've said, what I love about this recipe is it's very, very easy to make. It doesn't take much time at all. It's minimal effort, not too much skill. It's incredibly tasty. It can be eaten hot or at room temperature. And it actually tastes better if you've made it in advance. Right, so that's the peppers. The next thing I'm going to chop is the courgettes. So with the courgettes, you can choose whether to chunk the courgettes. So if you wanted to chunk the courgettes, you chop them down the middle, lay them on the flat side so that they're not going to roll all over the place. Chop them down the middle again lengthways, and then just chunk them like that, which is very nice. But personally, I think I prefer them slicing. If you're going to slice them, you'll probably want the thickness of £2 coins because you don't want them to be too thin, because then they kind of disappear down to just about nothing because there's such a lot of water in a courgette. So this is a great vegetable for Pesach because it is so versatile, so tasty, and you can make it in advance. It reheats beautifully. Now the mushrooms, I tend to just chop them in half or quarter, depending on the size. You can slice them, but I think you're better having them more chunky. Again, because they're so full of water, they will shrink down to virtually nothing. So I'm chucking those in. I've got another 3 there to go. Of course, if you don't like chili, if you don't like chili, if you don't like garlic, you don't have to add them. I think they add a lot of lovely flavour. Same with rosemary. So the next thing I've got here is I've got a small red chili. This isn't a particularly strong one. So I'm probably, because we like a little bit of heat in our roasted vegetables. So I'll probably keep the seeds in one half like that. And then the other half, I think I will just chop the seeds out. So just so that it's not too strong. There we go. And the seeds are the strongest part of the chili. And I really do like having the chili in this dish because I think it gives it that kick. Again, if you don't like chili, you don't need to add it. So I'm just, again, throwing that on the top. Now I've got a nice fat clove of garlic here. So best way to open your garlic is flat of your knife, squish it down, and that will make the skin nice and loose. And then if you chop the flat end of it, the skin will just peel off very, very quickly and easily like that. Very simple. And I am just very quickly going to chop this garlic up into pieces. You don't have to chop it up. If you really like garlic, if you like your garlic roasted in big chunks, you can actually leave them whole. And sometimes I do that, just put 3 or 4 whole garlic cloves in. It's a slightly different flavour. It's a bit more mellow. And if you cook it for long enough, they go very soft and very sweet. And that is just a matter of taste. And last but not least, I grow rosemary out at the front of my house. So I've got a lovely sprig of rosemary. And with the rosemary, I tend to chop that. You can just put it in whole as a sprig like that over the top. But personally, I prefer it when it's chopped finely. I think it spreads the flavour around. So to see what I'm doing, I literally just chop down the leaves. I've already washed this. Obviously, I've washed all my vegetables before I started. And I chop to the sides like that. And I like to have it in nice little pieces. And I never really want to find that I've got one of these woody stalks in, but you can stick it down the bottom and that will give nice flavour. So there we go. I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top. Last but not least, I shall give a good shaking. It's about a teaspoon of salt over the top. You need to add quite a lot of salt to this. It really does need the flavour. I've got a little bit of black pepper here. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of black pepper over it. So, whoops, I'm just going to add a pinch. If I had my black pepper grinder, which I don't have at Pesach, it would be about 10-15 grinds of black pepper. Last but not least, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. You can be reasonably generous with this. And then either go in with your hands or with 2 spoons, and you mix it all together. You want to make sure it's all very well coated in the oil. And this goes into quite a high oven. So I'm going to swap my chicken over now to a lower shelf and pop this on the top shelf so this has a chance to brown. Right, so all I'm going to do now is pop this in the oven. I shall change my shelves around. What we have in here is the chicken is becoming beautifully brown. So I'm just moving that out of the oven so that I can then turn it to, again, 200. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my roasting vegetables in the top of the oven. I do want it to go nicely brown. Yeah, there we are. And the chicken's just going back in the oven to finish off this stage of its cooking while we make the topping. Right, so the next thing we need to do while we've got the cakes in the oven baking, the chicken's in the oven roasting, and the vegetables are in the oven also roasting, I can clear my worktop and get started on the next part, which is making the lemon sauce for the lemon chicken. This is a lovely sauce, very tasty, packs a huge punch. Here we are, and it's very easy. So, here we are. The only ingredients we need for this part of the recipe is 2 lemons, 4 cloves of garlic, and 2 packs of fresh coriander. If you don't like coriander, you can, and salt, I should say. If you don't like coriander, you can use parsley or other green leafy herbs. I imagine you could probably get away with, not dill, basil. I think basil might work. I've never tried it, so it's only a guess. Right, so here we are with our lemon chicken sauce. First thing I'm going to do, I think we need to look back down at my hands. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up my coriander. Now, there's several ways of doing this. If you've got one of those herb choppers, you can pop it in that. Or if you've got, I've got like a wooden board with a rocking knife, which you can use, and that works beautifully. But I'm going to show you how to do it just with a general chopping knife, because that's all I've got for Pesach anyway. So what you need to do is gather the herbs up in your hand and use a rocking motion with a large curved knife and chop through it. And it does really need to be chopped fairly finely. So I'm just chopping this here. Now, personally, I absolutely adore the taste and the scent of coriander, but it is definitely an acquired taste. Some people find it much too perfumey and really, really don't like it. Right, so we're getting there now. Just chop, chop, chop. It doesn't need to be too finely chopped, but you don't want great big pieces. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this as the basis for the sauce that we're going to pour on our chicken. Right, that's the first packet of parsley chopped. Not parsley, coriander. Now here's my second packet. So it's about 80 grams. Each one of these packs is 30 grams. But I didn't really want to break into a third pack, and I think 60 grams is okay. But if you want to do with a full whack, the full recipe calls for 80 grams of coriander. And you clever people who have your own herb gardens and grow your coriander on the windowsill, that's going to be nice and easy for you. You can just harvest it. I found a lot of Middle Eastern cooking does use coriander. I personally really, really like it. It doesn't half make a mess. There you go. Now, okay, I think that will do. Doesn't have to be too finely chopped. The next thing we need to do is we need to peel and chop 4 cloves of garlic. Here we are. So here's my 4 cloves of garlic. Again, just to show you, if you squish it with the flat of your blade and then chop on the blunt end, it just peels off beautifully. So I'm just going to do that with all of my cloves of garlic. If you happen to have a garlic press, that is fine. If you prefer not to chop it yourself, you can use your garlic press. It does make it a bit finer, but I don't think it will alter the flavour. I think you'll be fine there. Oh, just getting that paper off. And there's my last clove. And sometimes what I do is I actually grate my garlic if I want it to go into small enough pieces. Again, if you are allergic to garlic, you can omit it, but I warn you, it will not taste as good. The garlic is integral to the fantastic flavour of this lemon chicken. What I can't get over with so few ingredients, how much flavour it holds. It is absolutely delicious. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm just slicing the garlic, and that works best for me. And once it's sliced, I gather it into a little pile like that. And then I take my knife, and again, I've got a curved, straight chopping blade, and I just chop it. I draw it into the centre, and I just chop, 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 chop. There we go. To tell you, the smell in my kitchen is phenomenal. So good. It's making me feel really, really hungry. Yeah. So I've now got my reasonably finely chopped garlic. And this is definitely fine enough. Okay, and I'm going to, what I tend to do is I gather it onto my knife, onto the blade of my knife, and I use that to get it back into the bowl. There we go. Right, next ingredient is 80 mils of, it's 80 mils of lemon juice. So, oh no, sorry, 100 mils of lemon juice. That is about the juice of 2 lemons. So I've stopped measuring it out now, I must admit. And I literally just juice 2 lemons and it's fine. When you've chopped into a lemon, you really don't want to have those horrible seeds go into your dish. So just use the pointy part of your knife to prise out any seeds in your lemon. If the odd one goes in, it can't be helped, but try and avoid it, because it's very, very bitter if you find that you end up biting down on your lemon seed. So I'm just going to use my juicer here, and I'm going to juice these 4 lemon halves direct into my bowl. There we go. And I've just noticed that there's a little seed gone in there, a couple of seeds. So I'm going to pull them out as I go along, because really, really, really don't like the seeds in there. One thing I will say about this dish, the flavour of the lemon infuses those potatoes. It tastes truly remarkable once it's cooked. Okay, so that's the lemon juice. And again, I can see another seed. So I'm just going to pick that out with my fingertips. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So we've already had the 2 tablespoons that we drizzled over the chicken before we put it in the oven. So now here's another 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to grab a spoon and give it a good stir. And it looks almost like pesto, this. It has that texture. It's not very liquidy, but it's got plenty of flavour in it. There we go. Right, I'm going to just clear a bit of space here, and then I will show you the next step in making the chicken. And then I think most things are going to be ready to come out of the oven. So let me just clear a spot here. There we go. Lovely. And I shall check on that chicken. So the chicken, oh, timing is perfect. It says another 22 seconds. So I'm going to get that chicken right out of the oven now. And I shall turn this around. So you can see the chicken coming out of the oven. And here we have it. So look at that chicken. Look at that chicken. So the chicken is now going a beautiful golden brown colour, and you can see the potatoes are all going crispy and brown as well. And a lovely bit of like chicken juice has come out in any case. So the next thing we need to do is we need to splat the sauce so that it's over the chicken and evenly spread. Here we are. Oh, there's one thing I forgot to add, I realised. Bear with me. I forgot to add my teaspoon of salt. So I must apologise now. You can tell I'm just not used to doing these webinars anymore. So I need a teaspoon of salt. Otherwise it really would not have enough flavour. Give that a good stir in. There we go. And we shall just splat that down now. I'm going to spread it around. And I just want to make sure that it's evenly spread all over my chicken. Okay, I just don't want to miss any little bits of this, because there's so much flavour in it. Now, this is the very important part here. We'll just make sure that it is spread evenly over all the bits of chicken and the potato. And the next step, as I say, is very important. Is you need to cover your chicken, and it has to be very, very tightly covered all the way around, because you don't want any of that steam escaping. It's the steam from the lemon juice that cooks the chicken, and it only needs about another 15-20 minutes in the oven, and then it will be done. Here. I'm going to wash my hands because they're very garlicky, and then we'll just check on everything else that's in the oven and see how it's doing. I'm going to just check on my chocolate cake. Oh, my chocolate cake is looking absolutely beautiful. So I think we've still got about another 10 minutes on the chocolate cake. So I dare not open the oven door. But we'll see how it gets on. Give it that last 12 minutes, and then we can check on it. But the one thing that I do want to check on is my roasted vegetables. So let's see how they're doing. So the roasted vegetables are now just starting to steam, but they've not started to brown yet. They've formed lovely juices in the bottom. And I'm going to pop this back in the oven. Okay. So that's pretty much all of it. We're just waiting for the last 10 minutes for everything to come out of the oven and be finished. But while we're waiting for that, I'll just talk you through what we've done, and also talk you through any queries and questions that I think might come to light. So what we've made today is we've made lemon chicken. So we roasted the chicken in the oven the chicken and the finely chopped potatoes with a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. They were roasted until they went to a lovely brown colour. And then we put a sauce on the top that was made of lemon juice, coriander, salt, garlic, and olive oil. And that is now in the oven, nicely covered up. With the vegetables, all you need to do is chop them up, add in salt, pepper, garlic, fresh herbs. You can choose your herbs, whichever ones you particularly like. And again, garlic and chili. And again, all these additions you can omit, choose, they're optional. But obviously, the more of them you add, the more flavour it will pack. And what you're wanting to do with your roasted vegetables is you want them to be beautifully caramelized on the top. So you want them to start going brown around the edges and quite soft, and they come out absolutely beautiful. So they're gorgeous. And with the chocolate cake, we melted some butter, we added chocolate and sugar, we added vanilla, then we added potato flour and egg yolks. We folded it into our egg whites and we popped it in the oven, and that needs about 40 minutes to an hour. So that's pretty much where we are now. Now, Alan, do you have any questions you want to ask me while we're waiting for everything to come out the oven?
When's the delivery?
The wait till Pesach for that one. The other thing I'd like to mention is a year ago, Seffi Stern of the Colo and I put together a short program on how to make up your Seder plate. And we are going to be sending that out with this webinar. So if you'd like a few hints on how to put your Seder plate together and the reasons why we do, why we put what we put on the Seder plate, it should be very instructional and hopefully a bit of fun. So that's pretty much where we are now. Everything is more or less done. I'm wondering, Alan, do you want to hang around and wait for a while till everything comes out the oven and I can show everybody what it should look like? And here we have it. If you look down at my hands, Alan, we can see the cake, which is finished. Unfortunately, a little bit of paper got stuck in the oven and charred, and it's gone on the top, but that is not going to make any problem with it. So what I want you to look at here is the fact that the cake, I can maybe turn this around a little so you can see the edge. If you can see the cake here, you can see it's slightly cracked. And I have to leave it in the tin until it cools down. That's the only thing that's really important. And what will happen is it's got a slightly domed at the top, and it will drop down a little as it cools. And this is what you want. You want the cake to be ever so slightly undercooked, because if it's ever so slightly undercooked, then it will be much more gooey and it tastes so much better. Sorry, please bear with me. My battery is about to run out. To plug in there. Right, things to tell you about this cake. Number one, leave it in the tin until it's cooled. And then when it's completely cooled, you just need to, back on the hands again, we just need to undo the edges like that. And then once it's completely cooled down, you will slide it off the base. Now, I'm putting this back on because I don't want it to lose its shape. It's really quite soft at the moment and a little bit gooey in the middle, which is how we want it. So the best way to decorate this cake, in my personal opinion, is once it's completely cooled down, if you peel off the lining paper and you flip it upside down, the top of the cake, because it's been made with whipped eggs, with beaten eggs, the top of the cake goes kind of crumbly. And if you try and spread any topping over a cake that's got that crumbly texture to the top, it won't stick, it'll slide off, it'll look messy, it doesn't look good. If you flip the whole cake over, then onto a board or a plate, peel the lining paper off, wait for it to fully cool down, and you can make a chocolate ganache, as I described at the beginning. You can heat up 3 fluid ounces of, which is I think about 75 to 100 mils of fresh double cream or paraff cream or non-dairy cream, some other non-dairy cream. Heat that up in the microwave for a minute till it's hot and bubbling. Then pour in 4 ounces, 110 grams of chopped dark chocolate and stir it in until it's melted. Then pour it over the top of the cake and smooth it over. You don't have to, I mean, you could just use melted chocolate on it if you wanted, but I think the problem is it will crack when you try and cut it. And if you make it with a ganache, it does cut beautifully. But bear in mind that there's already 6 ounces, 175 grams of chocolate in the cake, and you're putting about another 110 grams on the top, another 4 ounces. That's 10 ounces. That's a lot of chocolate. But from my point of view, it's worth it. I think it's fabulous. It's the best cake. And I tend to make it every year as a special treat. I make a really special afternoon tea on one of the days of Pesach and invite all the immediate family round, and we all go wild for it. So it's absolutely gorgeous. I think you'll love it. Now, let's see about these roasted vegetables. So here we have the vegetables, and if we can look down at the vegetables now, you can see that they've started shrinking. And if you have a look here at the peppers, you can see that they're actually starting to caramelize a bit around the edges. This is not done enough. I am going to put this back into the oven. But can you see how gorgeous and bright the colours are? So you're not going to want to do it till they all go brown and the same colour. That would not be a good idea. But you want it so that you get a bit more caramelization of your peppers, like there is on that yellow pepper there, that brown effect. And what you're also wanting is for your vegetables to be softened, and these vegetables are still a little bit firm. But what I will do, actually, what I will do at this point is I'm going to toss these vegetables. There we go. I'm going to use a spoon and toss them just to get them properly mixed together. If I tell you the smell that's coming off this, it's absolutely delicious. So I'm going to put these back in the oven. That'll need probably about another 15 minutes to be finished, but it's virtually there. And the chicken should be just about done now. What you can do with this chicken is you can make it in advance, do the roasting part in advance, pop the sauce on the top, cover it up, and then you can put it onto, cook it for maybe 10 minutes, and then you can leave it on a hot plate to keep warm till you're ready to eat it. So let's have a look. Oh my goodness, and that is the chicken done. So here we have it. You want to have a look at this? So it forms a really lovely sauce, lovely lemony sauce. So this sauce is a combination of olive oil, lemon juice, and of course you've got the coriander, the garlic, the salt, and you've got the potatoes and the chicken. So this is absolutely gorgeous now, but you can keep it warm for probably up to an hour on a very low temperature on a hot plate, and it will still be fine and it won't dry it out. And in fact, sometimes the flavours get better. You can even make it a day in advance, so I think it's better made on the day. And leftovers can be reheated, and they taste fabulous. And this is, I mean, pretty much it's a complete meal. So you've got your potatoes and your chicken there. I sometimes have a few more potatoes because my family really do like their potatoes. And serving it with roasted vegetables is lovely. If you're someone that really does like starch, then when it's not Pesach, you could always serve it up with a savoury rice, which is lovely. You could, or if you're a Sephardi, you can have it with rice, no problem. So there we have it. I'm just going to show you very last minute that the cake has slightly sunk back down, which really does change the way it looks. There we go. So if we have a look at that now, and this is what you expect to happen. You expect it to sink a little in the middle, and the top crust becomes very, very flaky. And this is the reason why you'll want to tip it upside down before serving it, if you're going to put a topping on it. Now, you can just serve it like this and lightly dusted with icing sugar, and it is marvellous even without the topping. So there we have it. We have roasted vegetables that are just finishing off in the oven. We have roast chicken, and we have our Queen of Sheba, Reine de Saba cake. And I wish you all a happy